She said the words like she was testing how deep she could cut before I bled. "You're just not man enough, Daniel." It was 8:42 on a Thursday night. I remember the time because that's when the treadmill at the gym shut off behind her, and her trainer, Evan, leaned against the mirrored wall pretending not to listen. He didn't look at me. Cowards rarely do. We'd been married 7 years. I was a financial consultant, the boring guy who kept things stable while she, Lena, chased passion. I bought her that gym membership as a birthday gift. Turns out, it came with a personal trainer and a slow, deliberate dismantling of my marriage. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her, her eyes bright, her tone rehearsed, and realized this wasn't a decision made in the moment. She'd been practicing that line for weeks. She took her duffel bag, smiled at Evan, and walked out with the kind of confidence that only comes when you think you've won. 2 days later, she posted a photo on Instagram, her hand on his chest, captioned, "When you finally upgrade." The comments were predictable. Friends cheering her new chapter, heart emojis, little affirmations from people who'd never met me but felt qualified to celebrate my replacement. I didn't comment. I didn't delete her. I watched, because sometimes silence is louder than anger. The weeks that followed were a blur of noise, whispers from mutual friends, her name popping up in local gossip threads. She moved into his apartment above the gym, started helping him with business decisions. Apparently, love came with free marketing advice. Meanwhile, I stayed where I was, quiet, methodical. Every night, I worked late, not because I had to, but because I needed to feel the rhythm of control again. Numbers never lie. People do. The thing about being a financial consultant is, you learn how money moves. And when money moves, truth follows. A month after she left, I saw her again. Grocery store mid-morning. She didn't expect to see me there. I was in line behind her as she tried to pay for her groceries. Her card declined. Twice. Evan wasn't with her. When she finally turned and saw me, her face froze for just a second. That little flicker of recognition, the moment she remembered the stability she'd traded for adrenaline. "Daniel," she said softly, forcing a smile. "Hey." I just nodded, paid for my things, walked past her like she was a stranger. By the time I reached the parking lot, I'd already decided I wasn't going to get angry. I wasn't going to beg or blame. I was going to rebuild, slowly, quietly, and when the opportunity came, I'd let the world show her what real power looked like. She'd think it was fate. She'd think it was bad luck. But I'd know better. Power isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It waits. The morning after that grocery store encounter, I deleted every photo of Lena from my phone. Not in anger, in precision. A clean ledger, that's how I saw it. You can't rebuild on contaminated ground. I threw myself into work. 12-hour days, no complaints. My clients like that about me, consistency. The kind of man who never loses his composure, no matter how rough the numbers get. What they didn't know was that behind every report, every late night at the office, I was reconstructing something bigger than spreadsheets. I was rebuilding myself. Meanwhile, Lena kept her highlight reel alive. Photos of brunches, hotel rooms, sweaty post-workout smiles. Evan was always in the frame, jaw tight, arms flexed. The comments said power couple. I saw insecurity. People who need an audience rarely have the confidence to stand in silence. Then came the message. 2 months after she left. A simple text. "Lena, I miss how calm you were about everything." No apology. No reflection. Just curiosity, like she was checking whether I still existed in orbit around her. I didn't respond. By then, I joined a firm downtown that specialized in corporate investigations, high-level financial audits, internal fraud detection. They needed someone who could track patterns through chaos. My kind of work. My kind of therapy. Every day, I watched companies unravel because someone got greedy or careless. And every day, I learned a little more about what real ruin looks like when it's properly structured. Evan's name started coming up in small talk around the city about 3 months later. His fitness startup, EvoFit Performance, was growing fast, maybe too fast. Sponsorship deals, new equipment, an app launch. All on loans. All on borrowed trust. I made a note of it. Not revenge, just observation. Lena was front and center in his marketing videos now. CFO, her bio said. CFO. A woman who once asked me what liquid assets meant. One night, my buddy and colleague, Patrick, leaned over my desk with a grin. Guess who's under review? I looked up. He dropped a folder on my desk. EvoFit Performance. Possible misappropriation of investor funds. They want an external audit. The firm's considering sending one of us. My hand didn't move, but I could feel my pulse in my jaw. Who's the client? I asked. State attorney's office. Could turn into a criminal case if the numbers don't match. I just nodded and closed the folder. Send it my way, I said. Patrick smirked. You sure? It's going to be messy. I gave a small, calm smile. I've handled messy before. That night, as I drove home, I passed the gym. The lights were still on. Through the window, I saw Alina behind the front desk, laughing with someone. I wondered if she had any idea how close her world was to the edge, how fragile that kind of borrowed success really is. She said once I wasn't man enough. What she didn't understand was that being a man isn't about noise or muscles or dominance. It's about control. And mine was absolute. The request came through on a Tuesday morning. Formal, sealed, and perfect. Mr. Daniel Carter, you are hereby appointed as the independent financial expert in the ongoing audit of EvoFit Performance, LLC. I read it twice. No hesitation, no thrill. Just confirmation that patience, once again, pays dividends. By then, I changed. Quietly, thoroughly. My posture, my suits, the way I spoke in meetings, sharper, more precise. People listen now. I didn't fill silences anymore. I let them work for me. When I arrived at EvoFit's offices for the preliminary review, the receptionist greeted me with a smile that faltered the moment she caught my name. Word traveled fast. Lena had probably told them about her ex, the dull finance guy who didn't take risks. Evan's assistant led me through glass doors into his office. He stood behind a standing desk, tanned, fit, wearing a smug grin that could have sold protein powder to monks. Daniel, he said, offering a hand. Didn't expect to see you in this line of work. I shook his hand evenly. Funny, I was thinking the same thing. Lena came in a moment later, holding a stack of files. She froze when she saw me. Not long, just a heartbeat. Enough to confirm she hadn't known I'd be here. Mr. Carter will be conducting our financial audit, the assistant explained, oblivious to the history in the room. Lena's professional smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Of course, she said, her tone measured. We'll provide full transparency. Good, I replied. I like transparency. The next few weeks were a study in self-restraint. Every spreadsheet, every invoice I examined was another thread unraveling the facade they'd built. The numbers didn't lie. Inflated revenue reports, inconsistent vendor payments, investor funds redirected to personal expenses. Evan's arrogance wasn't just in his body language. It was in his bookkeeping. One night, I stayed late in the office, reviewing digital transfers. Lena was there too, pretending to work, avoiding my eyes. Finally, she said quietly, I didn't know you were involved in this. I imagine you didn't, I said, eyes still on the screen. She hesitated. It's complicated, Daniel. It always is when you stop keeping score. Silence. She wanted to say more, maybe to justify, maybe to plead, but we both knew words were currency she'd long overdrawn. When I submitted my interim report to the board, it was clinical, factual, and merciless. The firm's liquidity was collapsing. Mismanagement, fraud, commingling of personal and corporate funds, a perfect storm of ego and incompetence. 2 days later, the investors froze all accounts pending full investigation. The gym went dark overnight. Equipment repossessed. Salaries suspended. Evan's social media went quiet. No more motivational quotes. No more shirtless photos captioned, built, not born. Lena stopped posting altogether. But I wasn't done. This wasn't revenge yet. This was just the foundation. The blueprint before the building collapses. At the next hearing, I'd be called to testify, under oath, in public, with her sitting there watching. And when that day came, I'd show them both what not man enough looks like in a courtroom. Power doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it just stands, calm and unshakable, while everyone else crumbles. The collapse began quietly, the way all controlled demolitions do. No explosions, no chaos at first. Just small cracks in the foundation. 3 days after my interim report, 2 of EvoFit's largest investors withdrew their funding. Then came the vendors, demanding payment, threatening legal action. Within a week, the glossy motivational quotes on the walls were replaced by silence and the smell of panic. Evan called me directly one afternoon. His voice had lost that cocky, self-assured rhythm. Daniel, can we talk off the record? There's no off the record in an audit, I said evenly. Look, man, we might have made a few accounting mistakes, but this doesn't have to get ugly. Ugly is subjective, I replied. Fraud, however, is measurable. He cursed under his breath and hung up. That night, I got an email, and signed, no address. But I knew who it was. Daniel, please don't do this. You don't understand. Evans in over his head. I never meant for it to go this far. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. The time for apologies had expired. The state attorney's office opened a formal investigation within days. I was appointed as their chief financial expert, the one responsible for breaking down the evidence for the court. I didn't request the position. They chose me because my analysis was unusually precise. I didn't argue. By then, the media had caught wind of the story. Local outlets ran headlines about fitness fraud and the fall of EvoFit. Evan tried to play it cool on social media, claiming it was a misunderstanding, a smear campaign. But panic shows through filters. His videos got shorter. His eyes darted more. Lena disappeared from the narrative completely, deleted her profiles, closed her accounts. I wondered where she was hiding, with him or from him. During one of the pre-trial meetings, Patrick leaned over and whispered, "You really think this guy's gonna walk?" I shook my head. Not if the numbers do their job. He grinned. Cold as ice, man. I didn't bother correcting him. I wasn't cold. I was focused. There's a difference. A month later, the court date was set. Evan had been charged with wire fraud, misappropriation of investor funds, and falsifying financial records. I'd be the prosecution's key witness. The night before the hearing, I got another email from Lena. Longer this time. No excuses, no flirtation, just desperation. He used my name on everything. The bank accounts, the filings, the invoices. I didn't know until the lawyers called. Please, I need help. I don't have anywhere to go. I read it twice, then closed my laptop. I didn't respond. Because the truth is, she was right about one thing. She didn't know. She never did. Not about me. Not about what I was capable of. The next morning, I put on my suit, the same one I'd worn the day she left me, and drove downtown. I wasn't going there for revenge. I was going there for balance. And when she walked into that courtroom and saw me sitting at the witness table, calm, collected, holding the fate of her new lover in my hands, she'd finally understand what real power looks like. Not muscles, not money, control. The kind that never breaks, never begs, and never forgets. The courthouse smelled like polished oak and tension. You could always tell who was guilty, not by their words, but by how they looked at the floor when the air got too quiet. Evan sat at the defendant's table in a tailored suit that didn't fit his new reality. His jaw was clenched, shoulders drawn tight, like he still thought he could flex his way out of felony charges. Lena sat 2 rows behind him. She wasn't dressed like the bright, confident woman I once knew. Black blouse, minimal makeup, the kind of clothes people wear when they finally realized image doesn't matter anymore. I didn't look at her. Not yet. I wanted her to feel that absence. The deliberate distance. The prosecutor briefed me before the hearing. You're the key, Mr. Carter. The jury won't understand the numbers unless you make them see the intent behind them. Don't just explain what he did. Show them why it matters. I nodded. I can do that. That night, I went through every file again. Transfers, shell companies, falsified receipts, the entire paper trail of Evan's greed. But something new caught my eye. A secondary account, opened 6 months earlier under Lena's name. Not a personal account, a business one, connected to EvoFit's vendor payouts. Dozens of deposits. Thousands each week. Enough to make her legally complicit. I stared at the data until the numbers blurred. So that's how it was. Evan's arrogance had dragged her in deeper than she knew. In that moment, I made a choice. Not out of pity, but clarity. I wasn't going to destroy her. She'd already done that herself. What I wanted was something sharper. I wanted her to see me, calm, unbent, and utterly beyond her reach. The morning of testimony, the hallway outside the courtroom was a low hum of reporters and echoing footsteps. Lena waited near the doors, arms crossed, eyes glassy. When she saw me, she straightened. "Daniel," she said softly. "Please." I stopped a few feet away. "Don't," I said. "Not here." He told me it was temporary, that it was legal. "It never is," I said. "And you knew it." Her voice cracked. I didn't think you'd actually go through with this. You should have thought harder before teaching a man like me about humiliation. Her lips parted. No words, just breath. Then the bailiff called my name. Inside, the world slowed down. The oath, the nod from the judge, the quiet creak of wooden benches as I took my seat at the witness stand. The defense attorney tried to rattle me with jargon, but numbers don't flinch. Mr. Carter, he said, surely you can admit some of these transactions could have been simple mistakes. I met his eyes. Mistakes have patterns. This had intent. He frowned. You sound certain. I am. I explained everything, line by line. Calm, clinical, devastating. The jury watched. The prosecutor smiled. Evan's face hardened with every sentence. When I was dismissed, I stood, buttoned my jacket, and turned, just enough to meet Lena's eyes. She looked small, smaller than I remembered, and for the first time since she'd left me, she didn't look powerful. She looked terrified. Good. That's what truth feels like when it finally shows its face. The hearing wasn't over. The fallout was just beginning. By the next phase, they'd start calling witnesses from inside EvoFit, employees, investors, and eventually, Lena herself. And that's when I'd finish what she started. Not with hate, with consequence. The morning after my testimony, the papers called it the quiet execution. They said my precision dismantled EvoFit's defense like a surgeon with a scalpel. They weren't wrong. Evan didn't show up for the afternoon hearing. His lawyer claimed illness, but everyone knew what it really was: panic. The investors had filed civil suits now, and the state had added money laundering to his list of charges. He'd built his empire on borrowed trust, and trust was the first thing to vanish when the lights came on. But Lena still had to take the stand. I found out from the prosecutor that she'd been subpoenaed as a key witness, the financial officer on record, the one whose name was attached to the accounts I'd uncovered. She wasn't charged yet, but if she lied under oath, she would be. Will she try to protect him? I asked. The prosecutor shrugged. People like that always try, until they realize self-preservation outranks love. That night, I went for a long drive through the city. The same streets I used to walk with her back when things still felt easy, simple, before ego turned love into a contest. I stopped outside the old gym, their gym. The lights were off. The windows covered with brown paper and a foreclosure notice taped to the glass. It should have felt triumphant. It didn't. Revenge, when done right, isn't a rush. It's quiet. It's the stillness after a storm, when you realize you didn't need the lightning. You just needed the rain to stop. The next morning, the courthouse buzzed louder than usual. Lena was already there, sitting outside the courtroom with her attorney, clutching a folder to her chest like it was armor. Her eyes found me as I walked past. She didn't speak, didn't even blink. Just watched, like she was trying to find the man she'd once dismissed. Inside, the judge called her name. She rose, walked to the stand, and swore the oath. Her voice wavered on the word truth. The prosecutor started gently, giving her space to bury herself. Mrs. Hart, he began, as chief financial officer, did you authorize the transfers made from investor funds to personal accounts? I didn't know they were investor funds, she said. Evan told me it was part of a marketing budget. And yet, your signature appears on every document. She hesitated. He said it was just procedure. I watched her unravel, thread by thread. Each hesitation a confession. Each glance toward me, a plea for the mercy she'd never shown. When the prosecutor presented one of my exhibits, the email chain showing her approval of those wire transfers, she went pale. I was told to sign, she whispered. He said Daniel would never notice. The courtroom turned toward me for half a second. I kept my eyes forward. By the end of her testimony, she wasn't defending Evan anymore. She was surviving. The defense lawyer didn't even try to cross-examine. You can't cross-examine collapse. After court recessed, she approached me in the hallway. Her voice barely carried. You could have buried me, Daniel. You still can. I could have, I said. Why didn't you? I looked at her, really looked. Because I wanted you to live long enough to understand what you gave up. She nodded slowly, eyes glassy. You win. No, I said. I just stopped losing. When she walked away, shoulders trembling, I felt no satisfaction. Just certainty. The last hearing was in 2 days, sentencing. Evan would finally face the verdict, and I'd be called back one last time. Not to testify, to witness. And when I did, she'd be sitting there too, watching her new lover learn, firsthand what real power looks like. Courtrooms have their own kind of silence. Not the peaceful kind, the tense, electric kind that sits heavy on your skin, where even breathing feels like interruption. Evan was back. He looked different now, smaller somehow. The tan had faded. His tailored suit sagged at the shoulders. His jaw twitched every few seconds, like the mask he'd built for the world was slipping piece by piece. Lena sat behind him again, hands clasped in her lap. No rings, no makeup, just the look of someone who finally understood what she'd really been worshipping. Not strength, but vanity dressed as it. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The verdict was already decided. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours the day before. My presence today was procedural, the final expert clarification before sentencing. The truth made visible, one last time. The prosecutor called me to the stand. I walked up, slow and steady, the same way I did everything. My voice didn't waver. It never does. Mr. Carter, the prosecutor said, for the record, can you summarize the financial impact of the defendant's actions? I nodded once. EvoFit Performance misappropriated approximately $2.3 million in investor funds. Of that, less than 20% can be recovered. The rest was laundered through shell accounts, luxury purchases, and personal expenses under false pretenses. And in your professional opinion, were these actions deliberate? Yes, I said. Every transfer, every fake invoice, every fabricated report. There was no confusion, only intention. The prosecutor stepped back. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Then came the defense attorney's turn. A man who'd spent the entire trial looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Mr. Carter, he began carefully, given your prior relationship with Mrs. Hart, would you say your assessment could be influenced by personal feelings? The courtroom went still. I could feel Lena's eyes on me, waiting, dreading. I leaned slightly toward the microphone. Personal feelings end where evidence begins, counselor. So no bias? None, I said. If anything, familiarity made me pay closer attention. He hesitated. And you stand by your findings? Every number, I said. Every fact. Every truth you tried to hide behind charm and hashtags. The judge gave me a long, measuring look before dismissing me. Thank you, Mr. Carter. That will be all. As I stepped down, I passed Evan. His jaw tightened, and for a brief moment, I saw the flash of recognition, the slow realization that I'd been the one holding the scalpel this whole time. The judge read the sentence. Evan Brooks, the court finds you guilty on all counts. You are hereby sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 5. The sound that followed wasn't gasps or whispers. It was Lena's quiet, uneven breath. I didn't look back, but I felt it. That weight of realization pressing down on her shoulders, the kind that doesn't fade for years. When it was over, the bailiff led Evan out in handcuffs. He turned once, searching the room for someone. Maybe her, maybe me. He found neither. Outside the courthouse, the air was cold and clean. Reporters crowded the steps, but I walked past them without a word. Power isn't something you explain, it's something you carry. Lena followed a few seconds later. I heard her steps before she spoke. You really did it, she whispered. You destroyed him. I turned to face her. No, I said quietly. He did that himself. I just kept the record straight. She blinked back tears. I don't even know who you are anymore. I gave a small, calm smile. You never did. She looked like she wanted to say more, but I was already walking away. It wasn't revenge that drove me anymore. It was precision, the satisfaction of symmetry. She'd once said I wasn't man enough. Now she'd watched what a real man does when he's underestimated. And that lesson would stay with her far longer than any sentence. 3 months after the sentencing, the headlines stopped. EvoFit was gone, dissolved, assets liquidated, debts scattered like ashes in the wind. Evan Brooks became just another inmate number in a system he once thought he was too clever to touch. I moved out of the city, bought a small house on the edge of the mountains, where cell service was unreliable and silence came standard. I needed distance, not from people, but from noise. The world loves spectacle. I'd had enough of it. Work came easy after that. My name carried weight. Companies trusted me to see through lies before they cost millions. I didn't advertise, didn't network. I just did the job right, and word spread. Power has a way of attracting those who recognize it, and intimidating those who don't. Some nights, I'd drive into town for groceries or a drink, and I'd see her. Lena. The first time, she was behind the counter at a small cafe. Black apron, hair tied back, quiet, polite. She didn't see me. I watched for a moment, just long enough to notice the absence of performance. No filters, no pretense, just the woman beneath the ruins. I could have said something. I didn't. There's mercy in silence, too. A week later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name in handwriting I knew too well. Inside was a single page. I've lost everything, Daniel. The money, the house, the friends. Even my name feels heavier than it used to. But somehow I'm grateful. You forced me to see what I'd become. You didn't destroy me. You freed me. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that. I read it once, folded it carefully, and slid it into a drawer. I wasn't sure if she meant it. I didn't need to know. Closure isn't a gift someone gives you. It's something you decide to claim. Spring turned to summer. Work slowed. I started running again. Early mornings before the sun rose, the cold air burning my lungs just enough to remind me I was alive. One morning, I stopped at a ridge overlooking the valley. Below me, the town still slept. For the first time in a long while, I smiled. It wasn't victory. It was balance. Lena would rebuild eventually, maybe differently this time. And me? I'd keep doing what I do best. Watching patterns, finding truth, and staying 3 steps ahead of everyone who mistook quiet for weakness. That was the real lesson in all of it. Being a man isn't about muscles or noise or how loudly you demand respect. It's about what you hold steady when everything else falls apart. It's the power to wait, to plan, to act with precision when the moment comes. And when it does, when the same people who laughed at your calm finally see what that calm was hiding, you don't need to raise your voice. You just let the silence do the talking. I looked out over the valley, the first light breaking over the horizon, and thought of the words she'd once thrown at me like a weapon. You're not man enough. No anger now. No bitterness. Just a quiet certainty. She was right back then, because being a man isn't something you prove to someone else. It's something you grow into when you stop needing to. And that, I realized, was the real power she'd never understood. Dear listeners, our story has come to an end. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments.